Zexthara crouched behind the twisted metal wreckage of what the humans called a car. Her 4 eyes scanned the ruins of the settlement through her scope, watching for any movement among the smoking debris. The acrid smell of burned plastic and metal filled her breathing slits, but underneath that familiar scent of destruction lay something else. Something that made her predatory instincts twitch with unease. The scent of defiance. She adjusted her position on the concrete, her claws scraping against the rough surface. The sound echoed slightly in the empty street, and she froze. On her homeworld of Kethmore, such a small noise would mean nothing. Here, in this strange place the humans called Earth, every sound seemed to carry weight. Her communication device crackled softly against her scaled neck. The voice of War Master Theclon filled her audio receptors, speaking in the clicking, hissing language of her people. Scout Zexthara, report your findings on the human settlement designated Target 77. She pressed the device closer to her throat, keeping her voice low. War Master, the initial bombardment was successful. Approximately 70% of their structures have been destroyed. However, what, Scout? Zexthara's tail twitched nervously. She had been a scout for the Kethmore Empire for over 2 decades, had seen the conquest of 16 different worlds. She knew what a defeated species looked like. They cowered in whatever shelter they could find. They wept for their dead. They surrendered or died. The humans were doing none of these things. War Master, I detect unusual activity among the survivors. They are not behaving as expected. Explain. Through her scope, she watched a group of 5 humans move through the rubble. They should have been running away from the destruction, seeking some impossible escape from the inevitable. Instead, they moved with purpose. The largest of them, a male with hair the color of dried grass, carried a primitive projectile weapon. His face was smeared with dirt and what appeared to be his own blood, but his eyes. Zexthara had seen those eyes before, in the mirror, in the faces of her fellow hunters when they caught the scent of worthy prey. They are organizing, War Master. The survivors are not fleeing. They are preparing. Preparing for what? They have no weapons capable of harming our ships. Their technology is primitive. Their bones are soft, their skin thin. They are prey animals, nothing more. The human male stopped suddenly and turned. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, his eyes met hers through the scope. He shouldn't have been able to see her. She was concealed, camouflaged, using technology his species couldn't even comprehend. Yet somehow, those strange blue eyes found her hiding spot with the precision of a trained killer. He smiled. Zexthara's blood went cold. She had seen that smile before, too. On the faces of Kethmore warriors moments before they struck a killing blow. The human raised his weapon and fired. The projectile struck the wreckage just centimeters from her head, sending sparks flying. Zexthara rolled to new cover, her heart's pounding in a rhythm she hadn't felt since her first hunt as a youngling. Fear. Actual, genuine fear. Scout Zexthara, report. War Master, she whispered into her communicator. I believe we have made an error in our assessment. She peered around the edge of her new hiding spot. The humans had vanished. All 5 of them, gone like shadows when the light changes. Her advanced sensors detected nothing. It was as if they had simply ceased to exist. A sound reached her ears. Soft, rhythmic, growing closer. Footsteps. Multiple sets, moving with a coordination that spoke of training and discipline. But that was impossible. The intelligence reports had been clear. Humans were a young species, barely capable of primitive space flight. They had no military tradition worth noting, no warrior culture to speak of. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched across the ruined settlement like a hell breath. Zexthara's thermal sensors showed nothing. Her motion detectors remained silent. Her audio pickups registered only the distant crackle of fires and the settling of debris. Then, she heard something that made her ichor run cold. Laughter. Soft, human laughter coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It echoed off the broken buildings, seeming to originate from the shadows themselves. It wasn't the mad laughter of broken minds she had heard from other conquered species. This was something far worse. It was the laughter of hunters who had found their prey. "War Master," she hissed into her communicator, "I need immediate extraction. The situation has changed. Negative Scout. You will complete your reconnaissance and report on the effectiveness of our bombardment. The human settlement is to be cataloged for slave collection operations." A small object rolled into her line of sight. Metallic, roughly spherical, with strange markings on its surface. Her enhanced vision immediately identified it as some sort of primitive explosive device. But how had they gotten close enough to? The explosion wasn't large, but it didn't need to be. The concussive force sent her tumbling across the broken concrete, her vision blurring, her audio receptors ringing. She tasted her own blood and felt the sharp pain of several cracked ribs. When her vision cleared, they were there. 5 humans stood in a semicircle around her, their primitive weapons trained on her prone form. The male with the grass-colored hair stepped forward, his strange blue eyes studying her with the intensity of a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. "Well," he said in the harsh, guttural language of a species, "what do we have here?" Zextara's hand moved toward her sidearm, but froze when she felt the cold touch of metal against the back of her skull. A 6th human had somehow gotten behind her without triggering any of her sensors. "Impossible." "I wouldn't," said a female voice from behind her. "We've been watching you scouts for 3 days now. We know exactly where your weak spots are." The male leader crouched down until his face was level with hers. Up close, she could see scars on his skin, old marks that spoke of violence survived. His eyes held an intelligence that the reports had never mentioned, a cunning that belonged to apex predators. "My name is Colonel Marcus Chun, United Earth Defense Force. And you, my friend, are going to help us send a message to your friends upstairs." "I will tell you nothing," Zextara snarled, her vocal cords producing the threatening harmonics that had caused lesser species to flee in terror. The humans didn't even flinch. Colonel Chun tilted his head slightly, like a hunting bird studying its prey. "You misunderstand. We don't need you to tell us anything. We already know everything we need to know about your ships, your weapons, your tactics. We've been preparing for this day for longer than you might think. Impossible. Your species has barely achieved primitive spaceflight. You have no knowledge of galactic civilizations." "Don't we?" Chun stood and gestured to one of his companions. The woman, elderly by human standards but moving with the fluid grace of a predator, produced a device that made Zextara's breath catch in her throat. It was a Kethmore communication array, military grade, still functional. "We've been listening to your transmissions for 6 months, Chun said calmly. "Ever since your scout fleet entered our solar system. Did you really think we wouldn't notice ships the size of cities floating around our neighborhood?" The old woman activated the device with casual familiarity, navigating its interfaces with the skill of someone who had been using Kethmore technology for years. "Your people aren't very good at operational security, are you? All those tactical reports, troop movements, assessment files, very informative." Zextara felt something she had never experienced in her entire life. Something that no Kethmore warrior was supposed to feel. Helplessness. These humans, these supposed prey animals, have been planning, preparing, learning, hunting the hunters. "You want to send a message to my fleet?" she asked, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "Oh, we're going to send a message," Chun confirmed. "But not the kind you're thinking." He nodded to another of his team, a massive human male whose arms bore the scars of countless battles. The man stepped forward and lifted Zextara to her feet with casual strength that surprised her. Her species was physically superior to humans in every measurable way, yet his grip felt like a crushing vice. "You see," Chun continued, "your people made a fundamental error in judgment. You looked at humanity and saw weakness. You saw our soft skin, our fragile bones, our short lifespans, and you decided we were prey. You never bothered to ask the important question." "What question?" Zextara found herself asking, despite knowing she probably didn't want to hear the answer. Chin's smile returned, And this time she could see what made it so terrifying. It wasn't cruelty or madness. It was the cold, calculating expression of a predator that had found itself facing a challenge worthy of its skills. You never asked what turned us into the dominant species on a planet full of things that were bigger, stronger, and faster than we were. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Earth. She had read the preliminary reports, but hadn't paid attention to the details. Why would she? It was just another backwater world full of primitive life forms. But now, with human hands restraining her and human eyes studying her like a specimen, those details came flooding back. Earth was a death world, a planet where everything evolved to kill everything else, where survival required not just strength or speed, but intelligence, cunning, the ability to look at something bigger and stronger and more dangerous than yourself and figure out how to kill it anyway. And humans hadn't just survived on such a world. They had thrived. They had driven countless species to extinction, not through superior physical attributes, but through superior tactics, superior intelligence, superior ruthlessness. They were persistence predators, pack hunters, tool users. They were the apex predators of a world designed to produce apex predators. Beginning transmission, announced the elderly woman, her fingers dancing across the Kethmore device's controls. Chen leaned close to Zextara's audio receptor, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any roar. Tell your war master that his prey is ready to meet him. The transmission began, and Zextara found herself speaking words that would doom her own people. Not because the humans forced her to, but because she had finally understood the truth. The Kethmore Empire had not found a new world to conquer. They had found a world that was going to conquer them. As her words traveled through space toward the waiting fleet, Zextara caught a glimpse of movement in the ruins around them. More humans, emerging from hiding places that shouldn't have existed, carrying weapons that shouldn't have worked, moving with coordination that shouldn't have been possible. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all of them watching the sky with the patient, hungry eyes of predators waiting for their prey to come within range. The hunt was about to begin, and for the first time in the history of the Kethmore Empire, they were not the hunters. War Master Theclon stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Bone Render, his claws drumming an irritated rhythm against the metal railing. The transmission from Scout Zextara had been disturbing. The human voices speaking in their primitive language, the clear sounds of struggle, and then silence. Communication Master Veltar, have you re-established contact with our scout? The smaller Kethmore at the communication station turned his head, displaying the nervous gill flutter that indicated stress. Negative, War Master. Scout Zextara's beacon went dark 17 minutes ago. Her emergency transponder is not responding. Theclon's tail lashed behind him. In 30 years of conquest, he had never lost a scout to primitives. The very idea was absurd. Scouts were elite warriors, enhanced with the finest technology the Empire could provide. They were invisible to primitive sensors, faster than any native species they had encountered, and armed with weapons that could level buildings. Tactical analysis, he commanded. Fleet Coordinator HFY stepped forward, her scales dark with concern. War Master, preliminary assessment, suggests the humans may have developed some form of adaptive camouflage or sensor masking technology. Is the only logical explanation for how they could have overwhelmed one of our scouts. Impossible. Intelligence reports confirm these humans have barely achieved primitive nuclear technology. They cannot have developed anything capable of threatening our equipment. Perhaps, HFY said carefully, our intelligence reports were incomplete. Theclon's predatory instincts flared at the suggestion. The Kethmore Empire had conquered 47 worlds. Their intelligence gathering was precise, thorough, and had never failed them. These humans were simply another primitive species to be enslaved or eliminated, nothing more. Deploy Hunter Pack Velaroth. If the humans have somehow captured our scout, they will learn the price of defying the Empire. The hunter pack was composed of 12 elite Kethmore warriors, each one a veteran of dozens of planetary conquests. Their armor was designed to withstand anything short of orbital bombardment. Their weapons could punch through reinforced steel, and their enhanced reflexes made them faster than any biological organism had a right to be. If there was a human ambush waiting, the hunter pack would tear through it like paper. War Master Theclon watched through the tactical display as the hunter pack's transport descended toward the planet's surface. The ship's stealth systems rendered it invisible to human sensors, and its pilots were some of the most skilled in the fleet. Nothing could go wrong. The transport reached the lower atmosphere without incident. Theclon allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Whatever primitive trap the humans had used to capture his scout, they would not be able to repeat the feat against a full hunter pack. War Master, Communication Master Veltar called out, his voice tight with confusion. I'm receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's coming from Scout Zextharaz's communication array. Put it through. The speakers crackled to life, and the harsh, guttural sounds of human speech filled the command deck. But underneath the alien words, Theclon could hear something that made his predatory blood run cold. Music. The humans were playing music, some sort of rhythmic, percussive sound that seemed to pulse with primitive energy. It was the kind of music warriors might play before a battle, the kind of sound that spoke of violence and victory and the joy of the hunt. Then a human voice spoke in accented but clear Kethmore. War Master Theclon of the Dreadnought Bone Render. My name is Colonel Marcus Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. I believe you have sent some of your people to visit us. Theclon's claws extended involuntarily. The human was speaking his language. Not only that, he was speaking it with the formal inflections used in military communications. How is that possible? I have your scout, the human continued. She is alive, though I suspect she wishes she weren't. You see, War Master, she has learned some uncomfortable truths about her situation. Truths I think you should hear. The transmission cut to a different voice. Zextharaz's voice, but strained and hollow. War Master, abort the invasion. The humans are not what we believe them to be. They have been preparing for our arrival for months. They know our tactics, our weapons, our weaknesses. This is not conquest. This is... Her voice was cut off, replaced once again by the human colonel. Your scout was about to say trap, War Master. Because that's exactly what this is. We know about your hunter pack. We've been tracking their descent for the past 7 minutes. Would you like to know what's waiting for them? On the tactical display, Theclon watched the hunter pack's transport touch down in the ruins of the human settlement. The 12 warriors disembarked with practiced efficiency, their sensors sweeping the area for threats. Their armor gleamed dully in the alien sunlight, and their weapons powered up with the distinctive whine of Kethmore energy technology. Nothing happened. The hunter pack moved through the ruins in perfect formation, their enhanced senses probing every shadow, every piece of debris. Their pack leader, Huntmaster Kexmora, reported regular status updates. All clear. No contacts. No threats detected. They were halfway to Scout Zextharaz's last known position when the ground beneath them erupted. Not with explosives. With humans. They came from everywhere at once. From concealed positions that should have been impossible to hide in, from underground tunnels that their sensors should have detected, from angles that defied geometric possibility. They moved with a speed and coordination that shocked Theclon's warrior sensibilities, flowing around the hunter pack like water around stones. But most shocking of all was what they were carrying. Kethmore weapons, Kethmore armor pieces, Kethmore technology modified and improved with human engineering. Impossible, Theclon breathed. On the display, he watched Huntmaster Kexmora raise his rifle to fire at a charging human. The weapon's energy beam lanced out, striking the human center mass. The human's primitive armor absorbed most of the impact, and the man kept coming, raising his own weapon. A weapon that fired concentrated plasma bolts with twice the efficiency of standard Kethmore equipment. Kexmora went down hard, his armor cracking under the impact. Ow! Fleet Coordinator HFY whispered. How do they have our technology? The answer came from the human colonel, his voice carried with crystal clarity over the communication array. 6 months ago, your people sent a probe to study your system. Did you think we wouldn't notice? Did you think we wouldn't capture it, study it, reverse engineer everything useful about it? You see, War Master, humans have a saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. When we realized we were about to be invaded by a technologically superior force, we got very inventive very quickly. On the tactical display, the battle was going very badly for the Hunter Pack. 3 warriors were already down, their advanced armor no match for human weapons powered by stolen Kethmore technology. The remaining 9 had formed a defensive circle, but the humans weren't attacking directly anymore. They were using tactics. Humans with Kethmore sniper rifles were picking off warriors from concealed positions. Others were using some form of jamming technology to disrupt the Hunter Pack's communications and sensors. Still others were placing what appeared to be improvised explosives in strategic positions, herding the Kethmore warriors like prey animals toward a killing ground. "This is Huntmaster Kexmora to Bone Render," came a desperate transmission from the surface. "Request immediate orbital bombardment on our position. The humans have. His transmission cut to static. "War Master," Communication Master Veltar said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be powering up some form of defensive array." "Show me." The tactical display shifted to show a broader view of the human settlement. What Theclon had assumed were ruins from their bombardment were revealing themselves to be something else entirely. Concealed weapon emplacements, camouflaged shield generators, hidden missile batteries. The entire settlement was a fortress. "War Master," the human colonel's voice returned, "I hope you're watching this, because I want you to understand something important. This settlement, this is just one of thousands. Every human city, every town, every outpost on this planet has been preparing for your arrival. We've had 6 months to study your technology, to understand your tactics, to prepare our defenses." The weapon emplacements began to power up, their energy signatures visible even from orbit. "You came here expecting to find prey, War Master. But Earth isn't a world of prey animals. Earth is a world of predators. And we've been waiting for you to come within range." The first salvo of human weapons reached toward space with impossible accuracy. Missiles that should have been primitive chemical rockets revealed themselves to be powered by stolen Kethmore technology, moving at velocities that made them nearly impossible to intercept. "Evasive maneuvers," Theclon roared. Too late. The missile struck 3 of his escort frigates simultaneously. The ship's shields held for approximately 2.7 seconds before collapsing under the sustained assault. One frigate exploded outright, its reactor going critical. The other 2 were crippled, their engines dead, and life support failing. "How? How are primitive missiles penetrating our shields?" Her answer came in the form of another human voice, this one female, and speaking with the clinical precision of a scientist. "War Master Theclon, this is Dr. Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Research Division. I thought you might be interested to know that your shield technology operates on a fairly predictable harmonic frequency. It took us about 3 weeks to figure out how to disrupt it. The missiles you just experienced were carrying harmonic disruptors of our own design, improved from the specifications we found in your probe." Theclon felt something he had not experienced since his first hunt as a youngling. Fear. Genuine, bone-deep fear. "You see," Dr. Chun continued, "humans have a rather unique approach to warfare. We don't just rely on superior strength or technology. We study our enemies. We learn from them. We take their advantages and turn them into weaknesses. It's how we survived on a world full of things that wanted to eat us." Another wave of missiles launched from the planet's surface. This time, Theclon's fleet was ready. Point defense systems engaged, intercepting most of the incoming projectiles. But most wasn't all, and the few that got through caused devastating damage. "War Master," Tactical Officer Zarkin reported, his voice tight with disbelief. "The humans are adapting their tactics in real time. Each wave is using different approach vectors, different jamming frequencies, different warhead configurations. They're learning from our defensive responses. That was impossible. No species adapted that quickly in combat. It took years of study and analysis to develop new tactics. The humans have been fighting for less than an hour. War Master Theclon, came the voice of Colonel Chun. I'm prepared to offer you terms for surrender. Surrender. To primitives. To prey animals. Never. Theclon snarled into the communicator. I thought you might say that, Chun replied. In which case, let me show you something else we've prepared for your visit. On the tactical display, new contacts appeared. Hundreds of them, rising from concealed positions all across the planet's surface. Not missiles this time. Ships. Human ships, but not the primitive chemical rockets that intelligence had reported. These were sleek, predatory vessels clearly built with stolen Kethmore technology, but improved with human engineering. They moved with an agility that defied physics, their hulls gleaming with energy signatures that spoke of weapons far more advanced than anything Earth should have been capable of producing. You see, War Master, Dr. Chen's voice returned. We didn't just steal your technology. We improved it. Human engineering principles, combined with your power sources and material science, have produced some rather interesting results. Our ships may be smaller than yours, but they're faster, more maneuverable, and significantly more efficient. The human fleet arrayed itself in attack formation with a precision that spoke of months of training. These weren't desperate defenders cobbling together a last-minute resistance. These were professional soldiers executing a carefully planned strategy. War Master, Fleet Coordinator HFY whispered, "We are outnumbered 14 to 1. Theclon's predatory instinct screamed at him to attack, to show these presumptuous prey animals the true meaning of power. But his rational mind, honed by decades of successful conquest, was telling him something different. They had walked into a trap set by a species that had been preparing for this encounter far longer than anyone had realized. Colonel Chun, he said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of inevitable defeat. What are your terms? Colonel Marcus Chun stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Nevada desert, watching the tactical displays that showed the Kethmore fleet hanging in space like wounded predators. Around him, dozens of Earth Defense Force personnel monitored communications, tracked ship movements, and coordinated the most complex military operation in human history. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment. Sir, reported Lieutenant Commander Sir Vasquez from the communication station, the Kethmore War Master is requesting clarification on our terms. Chen nodded, but didn't immediately respond. Instead, he turned to the reinforced viewing chamber where Scout Zexthera was being held. The alien warrior sat in what appeared to be a simple metal chair, but Chen knew it was equipped with restraint systems that could hold a creature 10 times stronger than the average Kethmore. She was watching him through the transparent aluminum barrier, her 4 eyes displaying an expression he was learning to recognize as profound confusion mixed with grudging respect. Tell me, Scout, Chen said through the intercom, in all your years of conquest, have you ever encountered a species that surprised you? Zexthera's response came after a long pause. No, never. The Empire's intelligence gathering is thorough. We know everything about a species before we engage them. And yet here we are. Yes, she admitted. Here we are. Chen turned back to the command center. His staff was watching him expectantly, waiting for his decision. The Kethmore fleet was crippled, but not destroyed. Their war master was asking for terms, but Chen knew that wounded predators were often the most dangerous. Open a channel to the Kethmore flagship, he ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien dreadnought. War Master Theclon stood at the center, his reptilian features composed, but showing signs of strain. Behind him, Chun could see other Kethmore crew members working frantically at stations that were obviously damaged. War Master Theclon, Chun said formally, thank you for accepting our communication. I trust you have had time to evaluate your situation. Your terms, human, Theclon replied, his translated voice carrying undertones of barely controlled rage. Chen smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Our terms are quite simple, War Master. Complete and immediate withdrawal from our solar system. Your fleet will depart Earth space within 6 standard hours and will not return. Ever. And in exchange? In exchange, we will allow you to leave with your ships and crew intact. Theklan's claws extended visibly. You dare to dictate terms to the Kethmore Empire? We have conquered 47 worlds. We have enslaved entire species. You are nothing but primitives with stolen technology. Stolen. Dr. Sarah Chin's voice cut in from her position at the science station. She was Marcus's younger sister, and her expertise in xenotechnology had been crucial to humanity's preparations. War Master, I prefer to think of it as reverse engineering, and improved upon if we're being completely accurate. She gestured her console, and new data appeared on the displays. Technical schematics, power output readings, efficiency calculations. Your probe, for instance, she continued, was a marvel of engineering. The power core alone taught us more about exotic matter manipulation than we had learned in 50 years of theoretical physics. But your people made some interesting design choices that we've been able to improve upon. The schematics shifted, showing side-by-side comparisons between Kethmore technology and human modifications. Your weapons systems, for example, are incredibly powerful, but also incredibly inefficient. You brute force your way through problems rather than finding elegant solutions. When we rebuilt your plasma rifle design, we increased its efficiency by 40% simply by optimizing the magnetic field generators. War Master Theklan stared at the data with obvious disbelief. Impossible. Those systems were perfected over centuries of warfare. Perfected for your needs, Dr. Chen corrected. But humans approach problems differently. We don't just accept that something works. We ask if it can work better. It's what makes us good at surviving on a world that's constantly trying to kill us. Marcus stepped forward, drawing attention back to himself. The point, War Master, is that you're no longer fighting primitives with clubs and chemical rockets. You are fighting a species that has taken your best technology and made it better. How long do you think your empire will last when that technology starts showing up in the hands of other species you've tried to conquer? The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Humans wouldn't just keep this technology to themselves. They would share it, trade it, teach it to others. The Kethmore Empire's technological superiority, the foundation of their entire civilization, would crumble. You cannot threaten the Empire, Theklan said, but Chen could hear uncertainty in the alien's voice. Can't we? Marcus gestured to Lieutenant Commander Vasquez, who activated a new display. The screen showed star charts, shipping routes, communication networks. The entire infrastructure of the Kethmore Empire mapped out in precise detail. 6 months, War Master. 6 months of intercepting your communications, tracking your ships, analyzing your patrol patterns. We know where your homeworlds are. We know which systems are defended and which are vulnerable. We know your supply lines, your staging areas, your strategic reserves. Theklan's expression shifted from anger to something approaching shock. More importantly, Marcus continued, we know where your other conquest fleets are currently operating. 47 enslaved worlds, each one potentially interested in learning about the technology that allowed primitives to defeat the mighty Kethmore Empire. The implications were staggering. If humans shared their improved technology with even a few of the Empire's subject species, the resulting rebellions could tear the Kethmore civilization apart. Worlds that had been enslaved for generations would suddenly have the tools to fight back. You're talking about genocide, Theklan whispered. No, Marcus replied firmly. We're talking about justice. Every species your people have enslaved, every world you've conquered, every civilization you've destroyed. They all deserve the chance to be free. Scout Zextara's voice cut through the tension from her holding chamber. War Master, listen to him. These humans, they are not what we believed. They are not prey. They are predators, and they hunt in packs. Theclon turned toward the communication pickup, his four eyes focusing on something beyond the camera's view. Scout Zexthera explained, "War Master, I have observed these humans for hours. They do not think like us. When we encounter a problem, we apply force until it breaks. When they encounter a problem, they study it, understand it, and then turn it against itself. They do not just defeat their enemies. They convert them into allies." She was right, Marcus realized. Already, human negotiators were reaching out to resistance groups on Kethmore-controlled worlds. Scientists were preparing technological packages that could be transmitted to any species with basic manufacturing capabilities. Military advisors were developing training programs that could turn enslaved populations into effective guerrilla fighters. "War Master," Dr. Chen interjected, "perhaps you'd like to see some of our other improvements to your technology." New data filled the displays. Faster-than-light communication systems that could coordinate rebellion across dozens of worlds simultaneously. Stealth technology that could hide ships from Kethmore sensors. Weapons that could punch through their armor like tissue paper. "This is just what we've accomplished in 6 months with a single probe," she explained. "Imagine what we could do with a year, with access to your databases, with the cooperation of your former slaves who understand your weaknesses better than anyone." The command center fell silent except for the soft hum of electronics and the distant vibration of ventilation systems. Through the viewing chamber, Marcus could see Zexthera watching the proceedings with an expression that might have been admiration. Finally, War Master Theclon spoke. "What guarantee do we have that you will honor this agreement? That you will not pursue our forces when we withdraw?" "You have the guarantee of mutual assured destruction," Marcus replied. "If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. But if your any other Kethmore fleet ever enters our solar system again, we will consider it an act of war. And, War Master, you've seen what we're capable of when we're forced to defend ourselves. And the technology? The improvements you've made." Marcus smiled again, but this time it was a more diplomatic expression. "That depends entirely on you, War Master. If the Kethmore Empire withdraws from human space and makes no further aggressive moves against us, then our technology remains our secret. But if we detect any attempt at retaliation, any effort to organize a larger fleet to return here, then every enslaved species in your empire will receive a very interesting care package." The War Master's claws drummed against his command console in what Marcus was learning to recognize as deep thought. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, but Chun could see the tension in their movements. "War Master," Zexthera called from her cell, "there is something else you should know." "Speak." "The humans could have destroyed our entire fleet. Their initial attack disabled our ships, but did not destroy them. They could have killed us all, but they chose not to. They are offering mercy to predators who came here to enslave them." Marcus nodded toward the holding chamber. "Scout Zexthera raises an important point. We could have obliterated your fleet in the first minutes of combat. Instead, we disabled your ships and captured your personnel. That should tell you something about our intentions." "What does it tell me?" Theclon asked. "It tells you that humans prefer to solve problems without unnecessary bloodshed. We're not interested in conquest or domination. We just want to be left alone to develop in peace. But War Master, make no mistake. Our restraint is a choice, not a weakness. We could be as ruthless as necessary if you force us to be." The War Master was silent for a long moment, studying the tactical displays that showed his crippled fleet surrounded by sleek human vessels. Finally, he spoke. "The Kethmore Empire accepts your terms. We will withdraw from your system and will not return." "Excellent," Marcus replied. "You have 6 hours to complete your withdrawal. Our ships will escort you to the edge of our solar system to ensure your safe departure." "And Scout Zexthera?" Marcus looked toward the holding chamber where the alien scout sat watching them with obvious interest. "Scout Zexthera will remain as our guest for the time being. Consider her our insurance policy against any change of heart on your part." Theclon's expression darkened, but he nodded. "Understood." The communication ended, and the command center erupted in cheers and applause. Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before turning to his staff. "Don't celebrate yet," he warned. "This was just the first test. If the Kethmore Empire honors the agreement, we've bought ourselves time to prepare for whatever comes next. But if they don't—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the command center understood the implications. Humanity had just announced itself to a hostile galaxy as a species not to be underestimated. They had turned the hunters into the hunted, but that victory came with a price. From now on, Earth would be a target for every predatory species in known space. The hunt was far from over. It was just beginning. 3 weeks after the Kethmore fleet's withdrawal, the first rebellion began. Scout Zexthara watched through her cell's reinforced window as Colonel Chen entered the observation chamber. Over the past weeks, she had grown accustomed to these visits. The human commander seemed genuinely interested in understanding her people's perspective, while she found herself increasingly fascinated by the strange species that had so thoroughly upended her worldview. "Good morning, Scout," Chen said, settling into the chair across from her containment cell. "I thought you might be interested in some news from your empire." Zexthara's tail twitched with curiosity. "What kind of news?" Chen activated a portable display, showing star charts marked with pulsing red indicators. 17 Kethmore-controlled systems have gone dark in the past 72 hours. No communications, no shipping traffic, no military patrols. It appears your War Master's report of our encounter has had some unexpected consequences. The scouts studied the display with growing amazement. The affected systems were scattered across the Empire's territory, but they all had one thing in common. They were worlds with large enslaved populations. The Veltheri uprising on Kepler 442, Chen continued, highlighting one of the indicators. "According to our deep space monitoring stations, they've seized control of 3 orbital platforms and are demanding independence. The Zephyrian Rebellion on Wolf 359 has captured an entire Kethmore battlecruiser. And the Andromedans, well, they've done something rather creative with your shield technology." He showed her recordings captured by long-range sensors. Ships that were obviously of non-Kethmore design were engaging Imperial fleets with tactics and technology that looked suspiciously familiar. Energy weapons that penetrated Kethmore shields, jamming systems that disrupted their communications, and coordination that spoke of professional military training. "How?" Zexthara asked. "These species were conquered decades ago. They had no military technology worth mentioning." "They didn't need military technology," Chen explained. "They needed hope, and the knowledge that the Empire wasn't invincible. Your War Master's fleet didn't just retreat from Earth. They retreated in front of a species the Empire had classified as primitive. Word travels fast in a galaxy connected by quantum communications." Zexthara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. "You're distributing the technology, the improvements you made to our systems. Some of it," Chen confirmed, "carefully, to species that can use it responsibly. We're not interested in arming genocidal maniacs or replacing the Kethmore Empire with something worse. But those worlds that have been enslaved for generations, those species that just want their freedom, they're getting all the help we can provide." The scout leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. The Kethmore Empire had lasted for over 1,000 years, built on the foundation of technological superiority and military might. If that foundation was crumbling, if former slaves were rising up with weapons that could challenge Imperial forces, then everything her people had built was at risk. "Colonel," she said slowly, "what have you done?" "What we had to do," Chen replied. "Your people came to our world intending to enslave or exterminate us. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" Before Zexthara could respond, Dr. Sarah Chun entered the chamber carrying a data tablet and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said, not bothering with formal protocol. "We've received a transmission from the Altarian Republic. They're requesting formal diplomatic contact." Chen raised an eyebrow. "The Altarians? I thought they were too advanced to be interested in contact with newly spacefaring species." "They are, under normal circumstances. But apparently, our little demonstration against the Kethmore fleet has attracted some attention. They want to discuss what they're calling the human doctrine of technological evolution. Zextaroth's blood went cold. The Altarian Republic was one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. They had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years, had technology that made Kethmore equipment look primitive, and had never shown interest in younger species except as curiosities to be studied. Why would the Altarians care about human technology? She asked. Dr. Chun turned to her with a smile that was somehow both friendly and terrifying. Because, Scout, we didn't just improve your technology. We revolutionized the entire approach to technological development. The Altarians have been stuck in what they call evolutionary stagnation for the past 3 millennia. Their technology works, but it hasn't improved. They've forgotten how to innovate. She activated the data tablet, showing complex mathematical formulas and engineering diagrams. Humans approach technology differently than most species. Where others see a working system and declare it perfect, we see opportunities for improvement. Where others accept limitations, we find workarounds. Where others follow established patterns, we break them and build something better. The Altarians are calling it aggressive adaptive engineering, Marcus added. They want to study our methods, learn how we think about problems. In exchange, they're offering access to their databases and manufacturing facilities. Zextaroth stared at the humans in growing horror. Bad enough that they had reversed-engineered Kethmore technology and improved it. Bad enough that they were sharing those improvements with enslaved species across the galaxy. But now they were attracting the attention of truly advanced civilizations, species whose technology could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. You don't understand what you're doing, she said desperately. The Altarians are not like my people. They don't conquer worlds for resources or slaves. They conquer them for knowledge. If they become interested in humanity, they will study you until they understand everything about your species. Then, they will either absorb you into their collective or eliminate you as a potential threat. The Chin siblings exchanged glances, and Zextaroth saw something in their expressions that made her even more nervous. Actually, Dr. Chun said, we're counting on their interest. You see, Scout, humans have learned something interesting about advanced galactic civilizations. They're incredibly conservative. They've been using the same basic technologies, the same tactical doctrines, the same strategic thinking for thousands of years. They're powerful, but they're also predictable. And predictable opponents, Marcus added, can be defeated. The Scout's 4 eyes widened in disbelief. You're planning to fight the Altarians? Not fight. Marcus corrected. Compete. Diplomatically, economically, technologically. The galaxy has been dominated by a handful of old civilizations for millennia, with younger species either conquered or ignored. We intend to change that balance. Dr. Chun activated another display, this one showing a complex web of communication lines connecting dozens of star systems. Over the past 3 weeks, we've established contact with 47 different species. Some are former Kethmore slaves. Others are unaligned worlds that have been ignored by the major powers. A few are even minor members of various galactic confederations who are interested in alternatives to the status quo. We're calling it the Free Species Alliance, Marcus explained. A mutual defense and technology sharing agreement between species that believe in self-determination rather than conquest. Every member contributes what they can and receives protection and technological advancement in return. Zextaroth felt dizzy. In 3 weeks, these humans had gone from defending their single world to organizing a galactic political movement. They weren't just fighting back against their would-be conquerors. They were reshaping the entire political structure of known space. The Kethmore Empire will never allow this, she said. My people will mobilize every ship, every warrior, to crush this alliance before it can threaten our dominance. Will they? Marcus asked mildly. According to our intelligence sources, the Empire is dealing with rebellions on 31 worlds and has lost effective control of 6 entire star systems. War Master Theclon has been recalled to the homeworld to face an Imperial Council investigation into his catastrophic strategic failure at Earth. 3 different faction leaders are positioning themselves to replace him, and 2 border regions are showing signs of attempting to secede from the Empire entirely. The human was right. The defeat at Earth hadn't just been a military setback. It had been a psychological blow that shattered the Empire's reputation for invincibility. Worse, it had demonstrated that Kethmore technology could be defeated and their tactics countered. Your people are excellent conquerors, Dr. Chen said, but they're terrible administrators. The Empire holds together because subject species believe resistance is futile. Once they realize that's not true, once they have the tools to fight back effectively, the whole structure starts to collapse. And we're making sure they have those tools, Marcus added. Carefully, selectively, but consistently. Every successful rebellion inspires 3 more. Every Kethmore defeat encourages 5 species to consider uprising. The Empire is facing what military historians call a cascade failure. Zexthara closed her eyes and tried to process what she was hearing. Her people, the mighty Kethmore Empire that had dominated this region of space for 1,000 years, were being systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitive prey animals. "What happens to my people when the Empire falls?" she asked quietly. The chamber fell silent for a moment. When Marcus spoke, his voice was gentler than she had heard before. "That depends on your people, Scout. The humans who are coordinating these rebellions have been very clear about their objectives. They want the enslaved species freed and the conquests ended. But they're not interested in genocide or revenge. Species that abandon their predatory behavior and agree to peaceful coexistence will be welcomed into the galactic community. And those that don't will face the combined opposition of every species they've ever wronged, armed with technology specifically designed to counter their advantages." Dr. Chen leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Scout Zexthara, humans understand what it means to be predators. Our own history is full of examples of powerful groups oppressing weaker ones. But we've also learned that predatory behavior is ultimately self-defeating. It creates enemies, wastes resources, and prevents the cooperation necessary for real advancement. What we're offering," Marcus said, "is a chance for your people to evolve beyond conquest, to find a place in a galaxy where strength is measured not by how many worlds you can enslave, but by how much you can contribute to the common good." Zexthara opened her eyes and looked at these strange humans who had turned her understanding of the universe upside down. 3 weeks ago, she had been a scout for the mightiest empire in known space. Today, she was witnessing the birth of a new galactic order. "And if I wanted to help?" she asked. "If I wanted to convince my people that cooperation is better than conquest, what would that require?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time since her capture, it didn't look predatory at all. "It would require you to do what you do best, Scout. Observe, learn, and report back to your superiors. But this time, instead of scouting for conquest, you'd be scouting for peace." The scout considered this for a long moment. Then, slowly, she began to smile as well. Outside her cell, across the galaxy, the old order was crumbling. It was time to help build a new one. 6 months later, Scout Zexthara stood on the observation deck of the human starship Endeavor, watching through the transparent aluminum as her homeworld of Kethmore Prime grew larger in the view screen. The planet looked different than she remembered. Where once the capital city skyline had been dominated by the towering spires of the Imperial War Ministry and the Conquest Administration, new structures were rising. Sleeker buildings with the flowing, organic curves that characterized Free Species Alliance architecture. "Nervous?" asked Captain Lisa Rodriguez, joining her at the viewing port. "Terrified would be more accurate," Zexthara admitted. "I haven't seen my homeworld in over a year. The last time I was here, I was a loyal scout of the Empire. Now I'm returning as an ambassador for the species that destroyed everything my people built." Captain Rodriguez, a veteran of the Battle of Earth who had volunteered for this diplomatic mission, studied the planet below. "Not destroyed. Transformed. There's a difference." The scout had to agree. According to the reports she had received during her journey to Kethmore Prime, the transformation had been remarkably peaceful. When the last of the Imperial fleets had been defeated 6 months ago, the expected bloodbath had never materialized. Instead, Free Species Alliance negotiators had arrived with offers of reconstruction aid, technology transfers, and inclusion in the new Galactic Confederation. The Kethmore people, faced with the choice between annihilation and adaptation, had chosen survival. Incoming transmission from Kethmore Prime, announced Lieutenant Commander Jackson from the communications station. It's coming from the planetary government offices. Put it through, Captain Rodriguez ordered. The main display activated, showing a familiar face that made Zextara's heart skip. Former War Master Theclon, now bearing the title of Planetary Administrator, appeared on screen. He looked older, his scales showing the gray tinge that came with stress, but his bearing remained proud. Captain Rodriguez, Scout Zextara, he said formally. Welcome to Kethmore Prime. I trust your journey was uneventful. Thank you, Administrator Theclon, Captain Rodriguez replied. We appreciate your willingness to host these negotiations. Given the circumstances, we had little choice, Theclon said dryly. But, I will admit, the preliminary proposals you've transmitted are intriguing. Zextara stepped forward. Administrator, it's good to see you again. How are our people adapting to the changes? Theclon's expression softened slightly when he looked at his former subordinate. With difficulty, but perhaps not as much as we expected. It seems that many Kethmore were growing tired of the endless cycle of conquest and administration. The younger generation especially has embraced the opportunity to explore cooperative technologies and peaceful exploration. The display shifted to show images from the planet's surface. Kethmore engineers working alongside humans and various other species, constructing what appeared to be research facilities and manufacturing centers. Young Kethmore students attending integrated schools where they learned alongside members of a dozen different species. The Free Species Alliance Educational Exchange Program has been particularly successful, Theclon continued. Our youth are discovering that there are ways to find meaning and purpose that don't involve domination of others. Captain Rodriguez nodded approvingly. That's exactly what we hope to hear. The Alliance Council has authorized me to present you with formal membership proposals, contingent on the completion of the war crimes tribunals and reparations programs. Zextara watched Theclon's expression carefully. The war crimes issue had been one of the most contentious aspects of the negotiations. Thousands of Kethmore military personnel had committed atrocities during the Empire's centuries of expansion. The Alliance had insisted on accountability, but they had also emphasized rehabilitation over revenge. The tribunals have been challenging, Theclon admitted, but necessary. We cannot join the galactic community with honor until we have acknowledged the harm we caused and made appropriate amends. The voluntary testimony program has been particularly effective. Many of our former military personnel have come forward to provide information and assistance to the Truth and Reconciliation Committees. And the reparations? Proceeding ahead of schedule. The Alliance's technology transfer programs have enabled us to increase our manufacturing capacity beyond anything we achieved during the Imperial era. We are now producing medical equipment, infrastructure components, and educational materials for species throughout the former Empire. It is rewarding work. The screen shifted again, showing massive orbital construction facilities where Kethmore workers were assembling prefabricated hospitals and schools. These would be shipped to worlds that had been devastated during the Imperial conquests, helping to rebuild civilizations that had been shattered by Kethmore aggression. Scout Zextara, Theclon said, I have a personal message for you from the Transitional Council. A new image appeared on the display. Council Speaker HFY, who had served as fleet coordinator during the Battle of Earth, now wore the simple robes of civilian government. Greetings, Scout, she said. On behalf of the Kethmore people, I want to thank you for your service as our liaison to the Free Species Alliance. Your reports and recommendations have been instrumental in guiding our transition away from the Imperial system. Zexthara felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Speaker next Phi, I have simply tried to serve the best interests of our people, as I always have. Indeed. Which brings me to the primary purpose of this communication. The Transitional Council has voted unanimously to offer you the position of ambassador to the Free Species Alliance. Your understanding of both cultures and your role in facilitating our peaceful transition make you uniquely qualified for this responsibility. The scout looked at Captain Rodriguez, who was smiling broadly. That's wonderful news, Scout. The Alliance Council has already approved your ambassadorial credentials. You will be the first Kethmore to hold a senior diplomatic position in the new galactic order. Ambassador. The title felt strange, but somehow fitting. She had begun her career scouting for conquest, but now she would be exploring possibilities for cooperation and peace. I am honored, she said formally, and I accept. The next few hours were spent in detailed discussions about trade agreements, joint research projects, and cultural exchange programs. As the negotiations progressed, Zexthara found herself marveling at how thoroughly the galaxy had changed in just 18 months. The Free Species Alliance now encompassed over 200 member worlds, representing dozens of different species. The old imperial powers had either joined the alliance or found themselves increasingly isolated. Even the ancient Altarian Republic had begun preliminary discussions about some form of association with a new confederation. There is one more matter to discuss, Captain Rodriguez said as the formal sessions concluded. The alliance has received a rather unusual request from the Velthari Confederacy. Zexthara's attention sharpened. The Velthari had been among the first species to successfully rebel against Kethmore rule, using human-provided technology to drive Imperial forces from their system. What kind of request? They want to establish a memorial on their homeworld. Specifically, they want to honor the Kethmore soldiers who were killed during their liberation war. The scout stared at the human in confusion. I don't understand. Why would they want to honor their former oppressors? Captain Rodriguez smiled sadly. Because the Velthari understands something that took humanity centuries to learn. Peace isn't built on hatred or revenge. It's built on understanding and forgiveness. They recognize that the Kethmore soldiers who died were following orders, products of a system that taught them conquest was not only acceptable, but virtuous. The memorial will honor all those who died in the conflict, Administrator Theclon added from the display. Velthari freedom fighters and Kethmore soldiers alike. The inscription will read, in memory of those who died before the galaxy learned to live in peace. Zexthara felt tears forming in her 4 eyes. In all her years as a warrior for the Empire, she had never imagined that former enemies could show such grace and wisdom. The humans taught us this, continued a new voice. Velthari Governor Mirtai had joined the transmission from her office on the liberated homeworld. They showed us that the strongest victory is the one that turns enemies into allies. Governor, Zexthara said, I participated in the conquest of your world. I provided intelligence that led to the deaths of thousands of your people. Yes, the Velthari leader replied simply. And now you're helping to build a galaxy where such conquests will never happen again. Which service do you think is more important? As the day continued, Zexthara participated in dozens of similar conversations. Representatives of former slave species who spoke not of vengeance, but of cooperation. Former Kethmore imperial officials who had found new purpose in reconstruction work. Young people from dozens of different worlds who were collaborating on projects that would have been impossible under the old system of competing empires. That evening, she stood again at the observation port of the Endeavor, now in orbit around Kethmore Prime. The planet below glittered with lights that represented not military installations or slave processing centers, but schools, hospitals, research facilities, and cultural centers. Captain Rodriguez joined her once again. Credits for your thoughts? I was thinking about the transmission I sent 18 months ago, Zexthara said, when I warned War Master Theclon that humans were not prey animals. At the time, I thought I was simply providing tactical intelligence about a dangerous species. And now I realize I was announcing the end of the age of predators. Humans didn't just defeat the Kethmore Empire. They proved that cooperation is stronger than conquest, that intelligence is more powerful than force, that building alliances is more effective than enslaving enemies. She turned to look at the human captain. You didn't just hunt the hunters, Captain Rodriguez. You taught them how to stop being hunters at all. Captain Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. That's the thing about being apex predators on a death world, Ambassador. You learn that the most dangerous prey is the kind that can become predators themselves if they need to. But you also learn that the smartest predators are the ones who figure out when to stop hunting. Through the view screen, Zextara could see the running lights of ships from dozens of different species, all working together to build something new and unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization based not on domination, but on cooperation. Not on the strength of the strongest, but on the combined wisdom of all. Her final transmission as a scout had warned of a species that was not prey. Her first report as an ambassador would announce the birth of a galaxy that had learned to live without predators at all. The hunt was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And at the heart of it all were the humans, the small, soft, supposedly weak species that had looked at a galaxy full of predators and decided to teach them all a better way to live. They truly were the apex predators of a death world. But they had chosen to use that strength to create life instead of dealing death. And that, Zextara realized, made them the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy. Dangerous to tyranny. Dangerous to oppression. Dangerous to the old ways of thinking that said strength meant domination. They were hunters of a very different kind. They hunted for peace, and they had just caught the entire galaxy.